Hey everyone, my name is Chad and I am a case manager at Frontline Legal Services. And today I'm coming to you to begin going into our Know Your Rights brochure, dissecting all the information that's in it and just going over it and sharing it with you in a visual representation. So for those of you that don't know, this is our Know Your Rights brochure. It was an initiative that we began in 2019 in action of understanding that knowledge is power. And by supplying our clients, patients, etc., with the knowledge or the power of knowledge, we are helping them become more autonomous and better able to advocate for themselves. And so today is basically just going to cover HIPAA, which is the very first paragraph. I was going to go into it a little bit more because this is under general information in our book, which is like that first page. I don't know if you can see it, but I thought that HIPAA deserved its own video because a lot of people, if you're on the other side of or being a patient, some people may not understand what HIPAA means, why it's important, and how it protects you. And so today, that's what I'm going to talk about. So what does HIPAA stand for? HIPAA stands for Health, Information, Portability, and Accountability Act. And so why is HIPAA important? HIPAA is important because it helps create trust and confidence between patients and healthcare providers, ensuring that their information is handled with care and kept confidential. So reading from the book, again, HIPAA stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It was passed in 1996 as a federal law that sets a national standard to protect your medical records and other personal health information. This is information that identifies an individual and is maintained or exchanged electronically or in a hard copy. If the information has any parts that could be used to identify a person, it would be protected. The protection stays with the information as long as the information is in the hands of a covered entity or a business associate. So personal health information could be anything such as your date of birth, your social security number, your address, your health information like any conditions that you experience. Those are examples of part of what HIPAA protects. And so again, it's important because it helps create trust and confidence between patients and healthcare providers, ensuring their information is handled with care and kept confidential. It gives patients control over their health information. It helps combat fraud and abuse by requiring healthcare facilities to implement and enforce measures to detect and prevent fraudulent activities. Under HIPAA, patients are empowered by having the right to access their own medical records. This enables them to stay informed about their health, make informed decisions, and actively participate in their own care. HIPAA allows patients to request amendments to their medical records if they identify inaccuracies, ensuring the integrity and accuracy of their health information. It also holds public entities accountable for their obligations to the patients and provides a framework for compliance. And this helps to ensure that the patient's rights are respected and protected. And so just going into a little bit of what examples of a HIPAA violation includes. So for agencies, organizations, this would be a lack of compliance training. So compliance training is required as well as documentation of that training. For health agencies. And so failure to provide either one often leads to a violation. Also, failing to perform an organizational-wide risk analysis. Performing this analysis is essential to obtain detailed information about an organization's vulnerabilities. There's a HIPAA security rule toolkit that assists with identifying with which areas to assess. And then next we have medical record mishandling. So this includes stepping away from an exposed computer screen or leaving documents with a patient's personal health information or personal health information on a desk or for unauthorized individuals to see. So for example, I don't know if some of you all know, but I used to work in pharmacy. I was a pharmacy technician at CVS. So an example of what they're talking about is basically if I were ringing someone up or actually taking a prescription in from somebody, and I leave the prescription on the counter, and the next patient walks up and sees that information, that is a HIPAA violation. And I say this so you all, when you are out and you are dealing with health agencies, pharmacies, clinics, etc., you can understand what a HIPAA violation looks like so you can protect yourself, because it does happen. Sometimes people don't mean to have these things happen, but it does happen. So the next one is using unencrypted technology to share PHI or personal health information. So an example of this would be sharing PHI via emails that are unencrypted. It is imperative that facilities and organizations use only devices and programs that are protected and encrypted. So why is it important? You may say that an email, it's private, it only goes to their inbox. Yeah, that's correct, but you also have systems that may be vulnerable to hackers. And if a person or an entity hacks an unencrypted email system or what have you with your personal health information, that's a violation. So failing to plan for cyber attacks is another example of what could be considered a HIPAA violation. Cyber attacks are increasingly common with so many records stored in the cloud. It is important for facilities and organizations to ensure databases are secure and cloud providers have processes to avoid, detect, and contain breaches. Next example is failing to get proper authorization to share records. So health facilities and organizations must obtain written consent to share records in circumstances unrelated to treatment and billing. A patient must provide consent to share personal information with other entities, and this includes family members. So again, another example is when I used to work in pharmacy, patients could call and see what prescriptions they have ready. Sometimes you would have their spouses calling and asking for that information. And we used to have a time with some of those people because as a spouse, unless you have some type of written authorization, power of attorney, that spouse cannot access that patient's information. And there was a situation, and it didn't occur when I was working, but this was at another facility, I think, where someone's spouse had phoned in and asked about the husband's prescription, and I think it was something related to an STD or something of that matter, and it ended up being a big deal with that person in that facility because they were not supposed to share that information because they had no written consent, no power of attorney, nothing that gave them permission to give that person's personal health information. So I say that, and I use this example just so you can understand the severity, or like how well protected you are as a patient, again, with your health information being shared with other entities. So the next example would be failing to safeguard devices that might be stolen. Computers are at high risk for theft, which poses a risk for violation because digital devices contain patient information. Devices should be protected, patients' files encrypted and secured with robust access permissions. The next example is in-person discussions about patients. Casual discussions about patients violates HIPAA when they aren't related to necessary treatment, information, and when they happen within earshot of employees that aren't essential to that treatment. Collaborations to treat a patient are acceptable, but conversations should be kept in private. So this would be an example of this could be you're at the clinic and you see the doctor and the nurse in the hallway having a conversation about Mr. Jones' health condition, and you're in earshot of that. That is a HIPAA violation. It should be held behind closed doors in private with only authorized individuals in that patient. The next example is disclosing incorrect patient information in busy practices. Simple human error is common in transferring records. Facilities and organizations should destroy faxes, delete emails, and not share other patient information. Double checking can reduce the chances of these mistakes occurring. So an example of this would be, again, I'm going to bring it back to the pharmacy because it's a health entity that had where we dealt with so much personal health information. So an example would be a patient calls, their name is John Smith, and they tell me who they are, but we have other measures to verify that that person is who they are. So I would pull up the computer and they have 3 John Smiths. A mistake would be if I just click on the first one and just assume that's him and just start blabbing off medications and information, right? So one of the ways to safeguard against that is to ask for that person's date of birth. And if you don't understand why a pharmacy may ask for a date of birth, your address, the last 4 digits of your telephone number, that is them safeguarding your information to make sure that they're not giving it to the wrong person. And even if you have somebody that goes and picks up your medication, they're going to ask them that to make sure they know that, because if they don't know that, they may not, and they won't actually release that medication to that individual unless they know that information. And especially if it's a controlled substance, depending on the pharmacy, it may be even further measures where that person has to pick up the medication themselves, or if there's a verbal understanding that so-and-so is coming to pick up the medication for that person. So that's an example of disclosing inaccurate patient information. It happens, because we're all human, but there are ways put in place to make sure, methods put in place to make sure that those mistakes are minimized. So the next example of a HIPAA violation is improper disposal of personal health information, digitally and physically. So for authorized agents, documents should be shredded before taking them to the trash. Digital files should be deleted entirely from hard drives. These situations are examples of physical HIPAA violations. So I think at the pharmacy I used to work at, personal health information went in a bag, and they had like a third-party company come in and take it would be like a solid colored bag, and they would come ever so often and take that, and I guess dispose of it privately, discreetly, whatever. We couldn't just throw an old prescription bag or an old sheet with our patient's profile in the regular garbage where your Starbucks cup goes in, because that's a HIPAA violation. Anybody could dig into the trash in the dumpster, find that information. That person's health information, personal information, is exposed. Social sharing. So this involves sharing information related to an organization or patient on social media, whether it's voluntary, involuntary. So an involuntary method of exposing PHI on social media would be being in an office and taking a selfie with a person's information exposed on the desk where somebody can zoom in and see that information. That is a huge HIPAA violation. And or just what else? Voluntarily putting something online, like if a pharmacy technician would have put, oh, I know such and such, and they have diabetes or they have HIV, HIPAA violation. The next example would be for getting a business associate contract. Vendors who work with covered entities and might access PHI must have a contract that requires HIPAA compliance. So, what do you do if you believe that your personal health information falls under a HIPAA violation? So if you believe that a HIPAA violation, a HIPAA covered entity or its business associated violated your health privacy rights or committed another violation of the privacy, security, or breach notification rules, you may file a complaint with the Office for Civil Rights, and they will investigate complaints against the HIPAA covered entity and their business associates. And so as far as all this, I will leave this information at the end of the presentation or video, but I'm just going to go through it, and then I will share the information of where you can mail or mail them at, or where you can go, because you can file it online on their online portal, or you can send the complaint in through mail. But if you have access to the internet, it's much easier to do it online. I actually was looking at it when I got some of this information off of hhs.gov. So anyone can file a complaint if they believe that there has been a violation of the HIPAA rules. It must be filed in writing by mail, fax, email, or via the Office for Civil Rights portal online at hhs.gov. So you must name the covered entity or business associate involved and describe the acts or omissions you believe violated the requirements of the privacy, security, or notification rules. And it must be filed within 180 days or 6 months of when you knew the incident occurred. And for mailing, you must print and fill out the health information policy complaint form package. And you can mail it to Centralized Case Management Operations, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And their address is 200 Independence Avenue Southwest, room 509F, HHH Building, Washington, D.C. 20201. And you can also email the complaint and consent forms to OCRC complaints. Actually, I'm sorry, it's OCR complaints at hhs.gov. And actually, again, I'll leave this information right after this presentation, which is winding down pretty much right now. That is all I have for HIPAA. In the next presentation, I'll continue in the Know Your Rights brochure. I'm not sure where I'll stop, but it looks like we'll be starting with patient advocacy under general information. And also, if you want a copy of the brochure, you can actually visit our website at www.frontlinelegalservices.org, and you can actually download it. We have two versions, so one for Louisiana and one for Georgia, because we have expanded to Georgia for some of you that may not have known that. And so things are a little bit different. Most of it's the same, but it's just tweaking the wording in some things, because some things are different here in the state of Georgia. But you can find those versions in PDF form on our website. And we also have a Spanish version of this brochure online as well, I believe. So that's it. And I thank you all for listening to this longer than I expected video, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.